from your end, let me ask you, what do you make of the current shape and form of the internal politics of the NDC?
I would say that the NDC is changing, and I don't know whether those who constitute the party are aware that it is changing. At least when the Fourth Republic was ushered in, quite remember that it was the NDC, that was the party that gained political power and had to run the country. And it has gone into opposition, and it has come back. You realize that as it is now, the party does not look like it used to be previously. Which means it is in a state of flux, and it is not so with just the NDC alone. I think it's going to be the same with all the political parties, particularly the NPP, which is also in opposition and might come into power one day. It will also perhaps come and meet these same problems, and how it will also deal with it will determine the character of the party. So for now, you realize that.
So what are you calling problems?
Problems?
What are there problems in the NDC?
For now, as you just said, from the summary that you gave us, you could really see that there are problems indeed within the party. And again, I would rather look at the problem in terms of the NDC as a government, and then the NDC again as a party. Because you realize that the party and the government, I wouldn't say they are synonymous, but the government, in fact, was created out of the party. And you realize that if that is the situation, then the two must always go hand in hand. Or if there is a gap at all, there should definitely be a gap between the two though. But you realize that the gap should not be that big. You see, and I would again explain the gap as the relative autonomy of the government vis-a-vis the party, or the degree of freedom that the government has vis-a-vis the party, in the sense that if that gap is very wide, then we'll have a problem. If that gap is close, then you would say that the party and the government are working hand in glove. But as it is now, you realize that there's quite a gap, and the gap is coming about, I think, as a result of the people who constitute the party as a substructure. Now, within that substructure, I'll say there are about two groups. One group is the group of the former president, who is also the founder of the party, and then the other group will be that of the mixed bag. Now, you realized from perhaps before 1992 that the group constituting the former president's group, the main concern is how to win power, use it, and then maintain it. You see, so you realize that the utterances of the former president has been said that it points towards that concern that we may lose power. See, because that has been his main business, in the sense that yes, gain it and then use it for the vision that you have. But it looks as if it's slipping.
But I'm sure the current president will tell you that he gained power and is using it according to his vision.
Definitely. With reference to Dr. Kobreji's letter, voicing his problems or his fears, what did the president say? He said definitely there are no fears. So definitely one will have to say something. You get the point I'm making. So you realize that as I was saying, the concerns of the former president is that how do we win, hold, maintain, and use the power? Now, the other faction I would say is that of the mixed bag, which is made up of party faithfuls, those who want to see development and so on and so forth. Now, these are at the base, and the government is up there. Now, the problem, as I was saying, is that now between the government and this base, what is the relationship?
Let me bring Kofi into the discussion, and especially in the preliminary sense, and ask you, Kofi, from where you are, I mean, basically what you see, you speak for former President Rawlings, you know what's happening in there. I'm sure you can tell his mind better than most people in this country can, because you speak his voice, and also for the former First Lady. You are also in the party, you are Deputy General Secretary right now, whichever way it is a party being led by Professor Mills currently, and yes, people think that perhaps the Professor Mills' position on matters is not quite in tune with the President Rawlings' position on matters and all of that. Do you see that your party does not have common ground on issues now? And I'll throw in your party chairman's letter as well into the mix. Can you tell me that your party does not quite seem to have common ground on so many things, and that it is divided for that matter?
Thank you, Lee, and let me say good evening to your viewers. And it's yes and no. Okay. I can't say complete yes, and I can't say no to your question, but I would attempt to explain why it is a yes and no answer. Yes, because that is what people are made to believe out there. No, because even if it does, it's possible and normal with an institution such as a political party and a party that is in government. And really, I saw that we will get to this point. We made a mistake right from the beginning when people made it look like it is Rawlings versus Mills theory. Okay. That theory was developed, and that is what has cost us up to this point. That when our founder and former president raised issues that is happening in government today or in the country today, it was made to look like it's Rawlings versus Mills, and that he is against the president. He's against it. So you could not even raise issues any longer. And those issues that are raised, instead of being looked at as issues being raised, that must be listened to, that must be attended to, or if they cannot be attended to, explain in a way as will make everybody feel okay. It was like I said earlier, made to look like, oh, it's Rawlings versus Mills. It's no longer like something that we thought is not going right, and we needed to look at it. So anytime it came from Rawlings, no, it should not be possibly looked at. That perception, that thinking, is what has fueled the situation that we find today, where people actually think that the NDC is virtually imploding. Like you said, the national chairman's letter also goes to indicate or so to give credence more to that perception that indeed, if the national chairman, who is supposed to be a member of cabinet, will be raising such concerns, then it means that there are very serious fault lines that needs to be looked at. Yes, I would agree that we are a political party that indeed is going through some phases, that you need to know the phase that you find yourself and manage that phase very well, such that everybody will be satisfied. This is a party that we describe as a congress, a party of persons that in the past believed in Dankwa Buzia Dombo tradition, that some also have people who believed in the Nkrumah tradition, and then you have a lot more of us who got onto the scene when President Rawlings took over, being in there. So when you are leading such a group, you need to make sure that you satisfy the concerns, the beliefs, the interest of all these groups. Its management, its linkages is where I believe that we've not been able to handle it very well. But it doesn't mean that we've not done the best that maybe we could do. But I believe that these are things we can really overcome. Good is happened so early for us to be able to see it, and leadership is what must prevail. And we must stop this theory of Rollins versus Mills, I have always campaigned against it. When issues are raised, let's look at the issue. As much as possible, let's keep away the persons that are raising those issues and see whether there are matters that we can look at.
Do you think that the manner in which President Rollins raises those issues is what perhaps has led also to this, considering, for example, that perhaps he is deemed to have, or at the beginning, have had much more access to the president than a lot of other people at the beginning? That was the perception. But where he throws the matter into the media, for example, and then you know that on Saturday we will have news file where you probably will be a part of it and some other people will be there. We'll set the agenda somewhere in this very studio. People will discuss it without the presence of former President Rollins, without the presence of President Mills and all of that. You will expect that people who shape opinion will take positions on these matters and then it will go on. You see what I mean? Do you think that at the beginning perhaps he should have spoken more directly to the president if he didn't want all of us to go discussing it?
Already, most of the issues that he raised are in the public domain. People just make news out of it because it's also come out from the lips of. But
sometimes the words greedy bastards and things like that.
No, these are words that people move around, used directly or indirectly without even getting the understanding. Like I remember, we were in Tamale, where he talked about a situation of many persons encumbering many positions and not giving their best as a result of that. Okay. And he synchronized that with the term Konongo Kaya. The media picked it up and said he meant the president cannot carry the load and he's not giving way for another person to go.
But what about greedy bastard? Do you think it was appropriate usage?
He gave instances to indicate that. Let me finish the first.
I'll let you finish because I'll come back to it.
So I'll come to it. I'll answer it. Right. These are issues that I've talked about.
All right.
So they are on my fingertips and on my lips.
Great.
So I just want to flow.
Okay, please flow.
You have a situation where one person is occupying many committees, even of the party. So, and you cannot, this is a party that has a lot of people, that we could have many more persons serving at various committees to make them function and function better.
Who is occupying many committees?
I don't have to be here and then be mentioning it. That would be.
But you're giving an example.
That would be unfair. But I've given an example. Even if you go into government, there are some members of this country and of this party who feel that they have expertise to serve on some boards, but then they are not doing anything. And you can see one individual serving on many what boards. They don't understand why.
Well, you can mention the names if it's a fact.
No.
If it's a fact that one person is serving on many boards.
What I'm saying is that it's
not an insult.
No, I will not. I
don't think it's unfair.
No, but I'm not going to mention anybody's name. These are matters that, like you yourself were saying earlier, we should discuss in-house. But we can raise the general thinking of persons. What I'm doing here is to try to raise the thoughts of various persons. But when we go in-house, we can begin to mention names and think that.
I have to take a commercial break, but can you deal with greedy bastards before we do that?
The issue of greedy bastards, and I did explain it clearly, that he indicated he has been there before, and that there are persons who never work for a party or decide to belong to one party. They belong to every party. They don't have a political party. All they are waiting for, get power, then they come around. They don't think about how to sustain your power to be able to continue to implement your programs. What they can get out of your power is what they think of.
Which people are these?
These were the people he's talking about.
Are there people like that in government?
Oh, of course. Who
don't belong to the NDC?
You have them in every government.
No, but I'm thinking that who don't belong to the NDC?
There are some who may belong to the NDC, but they may come with a different. They came into the NDC front.
I'm asking based on the question you asked, because you said they are neither here nor there. They just jump on the bandwagon.
There are some who will tell you that they are on political leave. There are some who will tell you they are sick. They can't walk. They had to use walking sticks. Some said they are collar neck, so they couldn't move around. But immediately you got power, they removed those collar necks, they threw away their sticks, and they are healthy once again.
Good evening to you, Dr. Arthur Kennedy.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm great. What about you?
I'm all right.
We're talking about the NDC, and we're basically discussing happenings or goings on in the party and the number of issues have been put to the fore. Without trying to lead you as to which areas to comment on, I'll ask you a bedside overview of what you make of the NDC currently in terms of its own metamorphosis, which some have called it so, and what is happening on the political landscape right now.
Well, I think what is happening in the NDC is interesting, and it is not all negative. I think part of it is a maturation process, that when you have a party that was in effect formed by a group that already had power by other than democratic means, one person gets a lot of influence in the party initially, then as other people come in and democracy takes hold in the party, then there will be more factions and more independent actors within the party. I think that that process in effect is climaxing. The future of the NDC, in my judgment, will depend upon how it can in effect shepherd the climaxing or the maturation process. I heard some of the panelists talk about how people had personalized issues, and whenever issues were raised, people cast them in terms of Mr. Rawlings versus President Mills. Given the nature of politics, it's very difficult to escape this kind of personalization of issues, because by and large, issues are represented by people, no matter how valid they will be in their own right. I think that Dr. Kwabnaje's letter was interesting, but one has the impression that maybe things were left a little late. That's the first question, or the first issue. The second one is whether maybe he could have addressed it in a different way, because when a party chairman has to write, there may be, one would presume that there may have been other efforts to maybe address these issues, and that these efforts were not heeded. I think in general, watching it from the other side of the political divide, I think that there have been a lot of instances when major actors could have acted differently. First, I think former President Rawlings raised very significant issues, and he got a lot of respect and admiration from somebody like me, because he was prepared at great cost to himself to raise these issues. I think maybe he could have been a little gentler in how he raised some of those issues, and maybe he could have used other methods. Of course, I speak from my limited vantage point. There may be other facts I'm not aware of. On the other hand, once he raised those issues, it will appear to me that maybe the president or those on his side could have handled them better, and they were not. I think, for example, that Nana Akunedu's run could have been handled in a more civil way. Even after her campaign, he wanted to speak in a certain place, and people wanted to prevent her from speaking. It was completely unnecessary. There were certain words of pejoration used in relation to the former president and his spouse that were unnecessary. People referring to him in effect like a dog, other people saying uncomplimentary things about the former first lady, including people that they had been very generous to in the past. So I think that regardless of the divisions, I think they could have been managed in a more respectful way, and then maybe the NDC will not have gotten to where they are. But I think where they are now, they are in a very critical situation, and if it is not handled well, the party might collapse under the weight of these problems.
10 months to elections, is the NDC any less of a threat to the NPP based on current form, or is the same old formidable foe?
Oh, it is a very formidable force. 10 months in politics is a very long time. So I think that those in the MPP who are inclined to celebrate maybe a little premature. There is a lot of work yet to be done. The NDC still has a lot of advantages on its part because of incumbency, and you never know within a week or two if certain things are done, or Mr. Rawlings might be back in the fold and everybody might be united. But they are facing significant obstacles, but they are still a very, very significant force.
Does it matter to the NPP whether or not former President Rawlings mounts the platform to campaign for the NDC?
It depends upon who you ask. There were shades of opinion that, for example, people think that sometimes the former president is too extreme, and that to that extent maybe playing a front row scares away floating voters who might otherwise vote for the NDC. There are other people who also think that he brings a lot of energy to the NDC. I had the opinion that maybe he would be more helpful than helpful, but after watching the 2008 campaign, I think the former president was a very crucial factor to the NDC victory. He brought a lot of energy on the ground, and therefore I think on balance is a net positive asset to the NDC.
Do you think in any way, and it's my final question to you, that all the discussions about a certain Alfred Agbeshi-Woyome will have any impact whatsoever on the fortunes of the NDC?
It would have some effect, but one does not know to what extent it will have an effect. It depends upon how the scandal plays out. I have written a couple of pieces the last 2-3 weeks, and I have raised certain questions. The first thing is whether in the end Ghanaians come to view this scandal as an MPP and an NDC come to raise money for an electioneering campaign that has gone wrong. Or secondly, what the answer to the question of what did the president know and when did he know it is. So at the end of the day, there are a lot of things to be done, and what indeed the president does. For example, does he demand the resignation of more members of his cabinet, and in the end, were there other people in government, some known and some unknown, who may have colluded with Mr. William in what happened? So I think there is a lot of ways to go yet before we can determine that. But I urge Ghanaians to be patient. I think those who have been accused are Ghanaians. They have due process rights. We should respect their rights, and we should be careful about condemning them or presuming their guilt.
Dr. Arthur Kennedy, we have to say a big thank you to you for joining us tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
You're welcome.
Let's come right back to the studio. And Lawyer Sekojo, let me begin this segment with you and ask you. A lot of water has passed under the bridge, at least on this show, in terms of the topics. But I want to ask you, what do you make of the relevance and place and role of J.J. Rawlings to the fortunes of the NDC in 2012?
I think first I would want us to look at the entity called a political party. I see a political party as people who think alike, and then come together to form a group, and then to engage in activities that will help them win political power. So now the running words here are people who think alike. And then the second one is engage in some activities that will help them win power. So now let's ask questions. Are the people in the NDC thinking alike, particularly J.J. Rawlings, as you said? Is he thinking alike or in the same way as his current president? 2, is he engaged in activities that will help the party win power or not? Now, perhaps these questions would go to Kofi.
But what's your own viewpoint on these questions?
My viewpoint, as Atakene Davis said, is that at times he should have been a bit soft, for instance, or called or used the party structures to call the attention of the president to some of the issues he's raising. And again, when you mention, and then again, and again, when you mention or when you say things like corruption, if you can give evidence to support and then ask the president to act on it, fine. But just throw it out there and that's it. You see, and again, with a sitting president, and then asking your wife to contest him, fine. We are saying it's democracy, so on and so forth. But if you look at the goal of a political party,
asking your wife makes it sound as if
very well. By your wife contesting,
all right,
and then perhaps looking on. I wouldn't say that he pushed her. You see, so you ask yourself whether these are activities that will help the party win power or not.
What's your answer? Yes or no?
Personally, I think Kofi.
So the question is to you. You are raising those points. That is, raise those points for you.
Now, if you raise the questions, and as you said, Saturday, and then the media will use it as an agenda, and then go more towards the negatives, which would be planted in the minds, on the minds of perhaps the voters, which the political party is looking for. Because at the end of the day, the political party will go hunting for voters. And if you are throwing this to them, do you think you can hunt and get them?
So your answer to that question is no.
Yes.
It is no. They are not doing, they are not seeing it.
So yes, so now as it is,
things,
there are people
on the same wavelength.
Exactly. They are not thinking alike.
Interesting.
And then coming down again to the government, you realize that there are the young ones in the government who are now pushing for parliamentary seats. So the question now you ask again is, are they pushing for the parliamentary seats based on their narrow, private, selfish interest? Because they want to build a career in politics. Or they are looking at the general welfare of the party. So now, if
again, what's your answer to that?
That's the problem.
What's your
suspicion? You again gave us the answer that others are saying that they're going to go independent. So now the question is, how can the party structures handle this particular problem or this particular issue that's confronting them? You see, and this is where you realize that the party chairman jumps in to say, Jack, the party and the government are drifting apart, and it is his duty to yoke the two together. Right. So by saying that I want to yoke the two together, let's call this crisis meeting. Because these are clear issues on the ground. I don't have to give you that evidence. But you are also giving it to us here, presently.
You think that was a good call by the party chairman?
It is. You see, because others are saying, go independent. What does it mean? It means you can no more hunt for, you go hunting and you get anything. You see, so as Atta Kennedy said, 10 months is quite a long period in politics, right. And things can turn around. Maybe one issue can turn things around. So there's still the opportunity for them to patch up and then deal with their internal problems and then move forward. But the problem I see personally at the moment is is the problem of J.J. Rawlings. Whether or not he would think alike with the party, or whether with the government, or whether or not the government will also think alike with him.
That's a problem you see. If Mr. Rawlings is going to campaign for the party, I was really going to ask you that question for a fact. But maybe I should take the opportunity to ask you now.
And I will continue, or you just want to ask that one? I would say this is his personal decision. That
has he spoken to you about it?
He has not spoken to me, but I know he always has principles, conviction that leads him to do things. If he's not convinced about it, you cannot get him doing it. There's always a conviction. He does things with conviction. Don't ever think that President Rawlings is somebody who just do something because you want him to do it, or that you think that this is like. He tells you a story in 1982. You ask him today, he'll tell you the same thing. Because this is somebody who is not sitting down to think and frame up a story. He speaks out of conviction. He does things out of conviction. That is what I know him to be. And so if he feels strongly that you're not doing what is expected of you, you've abandoned a certain principled position that you've all taken, it will be difficult to get him on board. But I cannot answer whether he's going to take part in the campaigns or not at this moment.
So is it safe to say that on the eve of Valentine's Night 2012, you don't know whether he will campaign or he will not campaign?
I have not asked him that.
He hasn't indicated.
Neither has he told me that he will or he will not.
So he has not
But
indicated.
if you want to ask me to hazard a guess,
yes,
as the founder of the party, and you want me to analyze politically like any other person will do, I would say yes, you will find him on the campaign trail. But that, like I said, is the personal question that he wants. Knowing whom I know him to be. Like people will say, oh, but this is a party matter, so you should have. President Rawlings is not somebody that you say that to. If it looks like people have not taken the trouble to even study and listen to President Rawlings when he was even head of state of this country himself. So Kofi, there are instances where he will speak to the things like that when he has finished, and people even can say, so, but this thing that you are saying will affect us. So they say, so be it. If it affects us, we have to do what is right. Even when he himself was head of state. So he's somebody that you cannot just come and sit here and say that, oh, we'll do it. In 2008, there were all kinds of theories, like Arthur Kennedy was saying, that people thought that, oh, if they allow President Rawlings to campaign, it was going to be a negative. So either intentionally or unintentionally, some people were working not to get him on the campaign. He himself sat and analyzed and thought that, look, Brong-Ahafo is going to be very critical. Let's start the program with Brong-Ahafo. It took us just a day to draw up a program, inform the region that we were coming there. We started with Sankore and moved through Brong-Ahafo. Anywhere we went, it's more like the executives there will tell you a lot of energy has been raised, or energy level has been raised in that region after he's gone in and exited. And I'm not surprised that Arthur Kennedy, who was the communication director, all of whom thought that, oh, Rawlings was more a negative, and so they should deal with him, now is confessing to the fact that, look, he brought in a lot more energy to the party. I was with him, so I knew what we did on the ground to energize the situation. So if you're asking me, this is a very difficult question to answer at this moment.
What about Nana Konadu Rawlings?
She's no different from President Rawlings. This is people with conviction. Look, it's not an easy decision to decide to contest a sitting president. Very few people even have the confidence to even decide that they want to contest a sitting member of parliament, let alone deciding to contest a sitting president. She took that solid, bold decision for and on behalf of a certain principle and out of some conviction. These are the people that we are.
And that's the reason I'm asking you whether you think she'll campaign for Professor Mills.
That is why I'm saying,
because it turned out to be a bit acrimonious. Do you remember that she did not stay after she got up. I remember that former President Rawlings stood up, shook hands with Professor Mills, or put his hand around his neck. And I think it was former President Rawlings who beckoned to her to come over and shake hands with President Mills.
I wasn't even there.
Well, I wasn't there either, but it was on TV.
I don't know whether
proximity,
the program,
time and space.
Whether the program even did indicate that there was going to be such
and she didn't make a speech. She didn't make an acceptance. That's what I'm saying. Whether even the program indicated that was going to be part and parcel of the, so many things happened there that were the arrival of the founder and herself. Are they hard feelings?
Came in at the time they were saying an opening prayer when even the leader of the party, the sitting president and the vice president had not taken their seats and all kinds of things, and people thought that things did not. But we have passed that stage. What we are thinking about now is how we can show leadership to make sure that everybody feels that this is a party I belong and ready and willing to work for.
Let me ask you a dangerous question.
When I work for this party, when I work for this party, I'm sure that my views and everything will also factor in the decision making.
Dangerous question.
I don't mind. If it is dangerous,
oh no, but
I choose not to answer. I reserve a right. I reserve a right to answer.
If it's not fit for television, I know I'll ask it.
That's what I'm saying. I also reserve a right to answer.
It's fit for television.
I know.
It's not very dangerous. I just use that jokingly, but really, I am sure you have conversations with President Rawlings a lot, formally and informally. I'm sure you do the same with the former First Lady Nana Konadu all the time. Tell us truthfully, when you sit down to have such discussions based on the last 2 or 3, what is the feeling towards President Mills and his government?
They have no ill feeling towards President Mills as a person, but they are seriously worried about the positioning of actions of government, be it political office holders or even persons who are non-political officers but occupying other positions that influence the people of this country.
Because Mills can't win with a corrupt organization, Mrs. Rawlings.
Oh, but you know that you are, at least to some extent, you work within the media circles. As Absolutely. For captions,
yes,
and things that yes. they pick, they will pick a caption and, yes. and dislodge it in such a way that it gives a different meaning. But when you put the same caption in the context that the person puts it, it looks completely different. So it cannot be like a direct, that this is the only thing that she said. It's linked with
they should do a house cleaning.
Of course.
And until they do that, the rest will be history.
Because take, for example, you've just talked about the Wyoming issue.
Yes.
This Wyoming issue gives government opportunity yes. to show muzzle, to show that, look, even if it involves my own, I can deal with it. I am not that type of person that will cover up for anybody whatsoever. I will not make a statement that I won't talk about acts of corruption in my government, because if I do, it will embarrass government. If it comes and it confronts me and I have to deal with it, I will deal with it. I will not.
The president is dealing with it.
Yeah, so far I'm comfortable with where it has gone to. I'm comfortable with that. And what I'm worried about is the ethnic or tribal sentiments that people are trying to even bring in, including even people from within and without the party. And that is where it is dangerous. Look, something has happened. There is a rule of law process that is going on. Both sectors are in court. The person is in court challenging one action. The state is also in court challenging him. So in the rule of law that is being shown out there, it is not the president or anybody wanting a particular person to punish or this way or that way. But there was one thing that Dr. Arthur Kennedy talked about. You see, influence in an organization, you also build it. The influence of President Kufuor today in MPP is more than the influence he had before 2000, because he's had opportunity of serving as leader or head of state of this country. So it is not because President Rawlings was president at the time the NDC was formed. Even if he was not, the mere fact that he has been president of this country for 2 terms, he will have some influence. President Kufuor today, his influence has increased more than it was before he became president, because he's had the opportunity of serving. MPP was not formed out of while they were in government. It was formed when they were not in government. But he has built some influence. So it is not only because NDC was formed in government, that is why President Rawlings has some influence. That point I wanted to also
clarify. Do you think Wyoming will affect the fortunes of the NDC in the election?
I'll take a wait-and-see attitude for now.
Okay.
It's because of the way things are going. If I'm of the opinion that the Constitution is meant to solve our problems, and most of the laws too have not been written. The Constitution just gives us broad strokes. Now it's up to us as a people, when the problem like this crops up, when you look at the Constitution, we look at how we can use it to deal with the problem. For instance, the Constitution, you see, technically is made out of 2 parts. The separation of, in terms of governance, separation of the 3 arms of government, and then checks and balances. Now, if I look at this problem, I think the pure separation can deal properly with this government, in the sense that let all the arms work, okay, and then the weakness of one arm will be the strength of the other. The strength of the other will be the weakness of the other. So let the executive work. Let it set in motion all the available instruments and institutions it can use to look into the matter. Let it cover whatever it wants to cover. let Parliament also work. Let the two, put the two together, and that's where you really see the solution to the problem. But if it becomes a situation where we're not going to let the three arms work, we're just going to let one work, it is possible we may not get to the bottom of the matter. So as it is, I'm only praying that the parliamentary subcommittee will also deal or do its work and then present a report as this Yoko report has been presented. Now let the whole of Ghana discuss the two reports. That's where we'll see who is who and who is lying and who is covering what, you see. But if it becomes a situation where it is just one institution we prefer, we don't like the other institutions, then how are we even going to develop our institutions? Let them do their work and make mistakes. We'll criticize them. And then once we criticize them, that is where now they begin to correct their mistakes and then stand up as institutions. It will not be a day's matter. Maybe these problems will crop up and it will keep on shaping our institutions. And as time goes on, let's give ourselves perhaps 50 years. Now we see our institutions standing as the institutions in perhaps the US and the developed countries are also standing and then doing their, solving their problems.
Okay.